Every time I used a bullet, I made myself 5 more immediately. That had been my rule for a while. My bullets worked out pretty expensive, both in terms of time and the fuel it took to smelt them. It wasn't really economical to make them in such small quantities. But what I figured was this. You can always find more fuel if you run out. Chop out some hardwood and make charcoal. Even burn the pianola, God help me, if you have to. But you must never let things slide, get casual, and run low on shells. If you can find someone who'll trade with you, sure enough, a bullet has a market price. But say someone picks a fight with you, hunts you down with a posse of his friends. What price a bullet then? What price not to hear your gun go click on an empty chamber? Plus, I liked making them. I like what happens to the metal as it melts down. I liked to crouch over the crucible, watching the flame through the smoked glass lenses that belonged to my father, watching the lead run like quicksilver. I liked the transformation and the cold, ugly slugs that I broke out of the sand and the molds in the morning. The trouble, of course, is that my shells were none too clean. If I ever get shot again, I hope it's with a nice, shiny bullet of surgical steel, not with one of my ugly things that looks like something someone dropped on a farrier's floor, carries God knows what dirt and germs in it. After I'd made my 5 bullets, I carried up some food and water and a light for the spirit lamp by the boy's bedside. He was plainly feverish. Eyes closed but flickering under the lids. Short, bristly black lashes. His blue-black hair on the pillow put me in mind of a crow's wing, muttering in that language of his. The pot was empty, but I took away the boy's stinking blue one-piece. He could have some of Carlo's old clothes, if he lived. At first light, I took him up some breakfast. There was nothing yellow about his skin. It was as white as bone. Faint black hair on his sideboards, but no beard or mustache to speak of. He'd eaten all the food I'd left him, but as I cast around for the chamber pot, he grew agitated. He was bashful. I knew then that I'd like him. I'd almost killed him, but he was shy for me to see his shit. How like a boy. I tried to make clear as best I could in gestures that he was to stay in bed and rest. He still looked none too good. But I'd only just mucked out the horses when he appeared in the courtyard, looking even younger and smaller in Carlo's plaid jacket and his slippers. He was unsteady on his pins, but he made his way over to the stall to watch me giving the mare her feed, and the sight of the horse seemed to please him. "Ma," he said, pointing at her. I started to explain how I never named the animals, just called them the mare, the roan, the gray. It doesn't seem right to give a name to something you're going to kill and eat one day, and it goes down easier as plain horseflesh than as a chunk of Adamski or Daisy May. But there was no way to make the boy understand, so from then on the mare became Ma. And then he pointed to himself, and the word he said sounded most of all like ping. That's right, ping. Like the bell on a shop counter, like a button popping off your shirt, or a snapped banjo string. I wondered what kind of heathen name that was, or if there was a Saint Ping that no one had told me about. But Ping he was. A name's a name. And so I introduced myself to him. I pointed to myself and I said my name. Makepeace. He looked all quizzical, squinted up his face as if he hadn't heard right and he wasn't sure if he dared say the word. So I said it again. Makepeace. Now his face broke out in a broad grin. Makepeace? I looked at him careful, but he wasn't trying to poke fun at me. He just thought that was my name. And it seemed funny, since I had some laughs on account of his name, that he had made such a mess of mine. There wasn't any point in having Ping in my home and not trusting him. I'm ornery and solitary and suspicious, and that's how I've stayed alive so long. The last person other than me to sleep under that roof was Carlo, and that was more than 10 years earlier. But it seemed to me then, it still does now, that if you let someone in, you should let them all the way in. Whenever I rode out of the courtyard, I took the view that everyone I met was one way or another planning to kill or rob me. But I couldn't live like that in my own home. I decided to trust Ping, not because I had a gut instinct about him. I didn't know him from the Oriental Adam, but because that was the only way I could live. And yet, I was still a little surprised when I rode back in at lunchtime to find my locks intact, and the firewood still stacked neatly, and the chickens pecking, and the cabbage and apples in the root cellar undisturbed. There was no sign of Ping, though, and I confess that at that moment I felt sad at the thought that he might have left. I clattered up to the second story in my boots, hallooing on the stairs. No sign of him. I burst into Carlo's room and was taken aback by the scene I found. There was Ping, with a looking-glass in front of him, and my ma's old embroidery case, and the spirit lamp burning away, and he was taking the old steel needles one by one, waving them in the flame, and sticking them into the flesh of his ears. He smiled to see me and laughed at my consternation. His whole ear bristled like porcupine quills. It must have pained him dreadfully, but he didn't seem put out by it. In fact, he just went right on sticking them into his ears. And when he'd done that, he put 1 or 2 in his nose, and 1 or 2 in his shoulder for good measure. I have a strong stomach. I have to. But the sight of that made me come over a bit queer. Ping gave me to understand that he wasn't crazy, that the needles were intended to do him some good for the wound in his shoulder. But what white or black magic that was, I'm afraid I can't tell you.